In this video, with the animation blocked in and the basic facial poses in place, I'll look at interpolating or smoothing out those keyframes. Right now, we can see as I scrub on the timeline, the Anibot pops from frame to frame. It's using step tangents. What that means is that that keyframe holds the value until the next key. I've gone through and set just about all these to step as a way to see the poses in. It may need some more fine-tuning, but I'd like to see that motion smooth and see if it's got good weight and timing going on. What I'll do to start is to pick the main controller, and there's the keys down on the timeline. We've got different ways of handling the smoothing in those keys. One of the things we can do is make them all linear timing to start, and then come back and adjust the keys individually. I'll hold Shift and left click on the timeline and drag down to select all the keys. I'll right click and choose Tangents Linear. Alternately, I can use the graph editor or the dope sheet to do this. I'll choose as an example Window, Animation Editors, Dope Sheet. The dope sheet corresponds to a traditional X sheet or dope sheet from 2D animation. What it lists are the keys and the times and the object, not necessarily handles like in the graph editor where we'd see a spline view, but instead the keys are displayed as ticks so we can look at their position relative to each other over time. With the main controls selected, my keys show up in yellow. I'll frame all and make sure I can see all the keys. With the keys selected, I'm going to set their tangents to linear and see how this looks. I'll choose Tangents and Linear. We can also choose Plateau, which is a slow in, slow out. We've got different things we can do in here, and really the idea is to get it pretty good without being drifty or floaty. Linear is nice because that keyframe will be evenly interpolated up to the next one. The tween frames will be evenly spaced. After this, I can go pick keys and start adjusting their handles. I'll put it at linear and see how they look. Now when I go back to frame 1 and press play, I see the animation. There's a crouch and a blink and a sproing up. And there's the open eye, and he comes back down. Obviously, I've only dealt with the part up through the crouch and spring, and not the rebound yet. What I also need to do is make sure this is playing smoothly. I'll go back into my preferences, clicking on the Preferences button on the lower right of the viewport, and change the playback speed. Right now it's set to play every frame, which may not show me real time. I'll drop this down and pick Real Time. This way it's going to play at the real time, 24 frames per second. If it has to drop frames to keep pace, it will. But Maya will do its best to show things at the true speed. One of the biggest critiques of student work that I have when reviewing portfolios is the animation is too slow and drifting. We can speed it up and snap those keys, making them fast in. I'll click Save and see how this looks again, going back to the beginning and hitting play. The timing is decent, although it's a little slow. However, it gives me latitude in here to adjust the keys. Now with these in place and smoothed out, I'll start to look at each key and how it's timed to get that motion expressive. I'll change my view. On the left side in the toolbox, we'll see different viewport configurations, one of which, aside from the foreview, has a graph editor at the bottom. Alternately, I can choose Window, Animation Editors, and Graph Editor. The graph editor displays my keys in a spline view, with handles if they have them. What I'll do is start to smooth this out, looking at one property at a time and adjusting those handles. Right now, what happens is that he moves up on the y-axis, so I'll start with the Translate Y. I'll pick Translate Y and make sure I frame all so I can see all of the keys. We can see it as linear currently, and there's that hold at the bottom as he comes down and pauses in the crouch. What I'll do is pick, I'll call it the biggest key, but really the start of a giant transition, the jump, and adjust it, selecting that key and changing its handles over. In this case, I'll switch it over to Auto, and that gives me a slow in, slow out with Bezier handles. I'm also going to take these tangents and turn off their weighting. Right now, those tangents are locked. I can click on the Break Tangents button, and I can adjust one at a time, keeping the in tangent flat and making the out a sharp curve. I'll also free their tangent weights. With the keys selected, clicking on the Free Tangent Weight button. What this lets me do is to pick this key, or pick this tangent, and drag it up. I'll press W for move and select the tangent here. Then with the mouse wheel, I'll click and drag and pull that key up, adjusting it so it's nearly vertical. It's a sharp spring off the bottom. I'll take the top key up here and make it auto. We'd like to have a slow in as he hits the top at a slow motion and stops almost for a second, and then starts to drop into motion rapidly. Finally, I'll take this key at the end. I'll set it over to auto or to spline, and then adjust those handles. Again, with the key selected, I'm going to break the weights and free them. With that key, I'll click and drag down on that handle. It'll come into that key smoothly. Alternately, I can pull it up, watching how much I pull so it doesn't spring out of range. I'll pull this up and see how it looks with just the adjustment on the y-axis. Back here in frame 1, I'll click play. He crouches down and springs up and hangs. We have the start of a successful animation. Let's watch it again and see if the motion holds. He crouches down, springs, hangs, his eye pops open as he realizes how high up he is, and he comes back down. Now that I've got the keys going, I'll go through and adjust the rest, making sure the motion is snappy, that the timing has weight to it, and there's anticipation and overlapping action. Then I'll get in there and adjust the handles on the secondary pieces, the eyes so the lids can fly open as he realizes how high up he is. Finally, I'll get into the mouth and other blend shapes, and see if I can get his mouth to pop open, accenting the eye movement. I'll work over the initial keys on the body, getting the body posing and motion in the right place first, and then deal with the secondary items.